Nothing crazy or anything like that. Should we move ourselves to the side a little bit rather than getting the door handle on?
Yeah, maybe like this. Because we already have some people here, which is great. Hello, everyone. And I'm just open the chat here, and then we can see, we can confirm whether your guys already seeing us. Anyone there?
Yep. Oh, okay, good.
That's good. Oi, Mariane. Tudo bem? And let me just pull rest of the participants.
Oi.
In a few more minutes we'll start. We are 7 minutes away from the scheduled time, which was 4 p.m. Perth time.
Okay.
Mariane, I think you are on mute. I think all the participants are on mute. Então você tá no mudo aí, tá? A gente deixa assim para que a experiência de quem estiver assistindo. Você é brasileira, né? Posso falar em português? Então a gente deixa assim para que a experiência de quem estiver nos assistindo seja um pouco melhor. Tá? Eventualmente, se a gente tiver um espaço, a gente consegue abrir o microfone para uma outra pergunta. Tá bom? Because we have Adolfo with us as well. Adolfo is originally from Mexico, and he will run a brief introduction. Yes, he will run a bit of introduction in Spanish to those that speak Spanish. Ok? Rosimar Costa, também brasileiro, seja bem-vindo. A few people already in the room, so it's great. Lerson, Marcela, Mariane, Murilo Oliveira, Rosimário e Thiago. Eu, pelos nomes aqui, estou achando que todo mundo é brasileiro, né? Is there anyone that is not Brazilian there at the moment? I think everyone is Brazilian, so. Lovely. Bom vê-los todos aqui. Precisamos de mais 5 minutinhos. E aí a gente já começa o nosso bate-papo.
alguns minutinhos, a gente está só aqui preparando algumas coisinhas para apresentar para vocês. Olha. Everything water.
Maybe for the introduction. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and just and then they can move over.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So yeah, just when right. But I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then when we start going into it.
E temos mais aí 1 minuto. Já pode começar, sejam bem-vindos todos. Vou só colocar aqui a apresentação no ar, para todo mundo na mesma página que a gente. Deixa eu olhar no seu conta aqui. Ok.
Is it all for a host or a panelist?
Yes, he's a panelist.
So that's sharing the screen.
Tá todo mundo conseguindo ver minha tela aí? Consegue enxergar? Você consegue ver aí? Está vendo bem?
I think we're nearly ready, huh?
Yeah. Ok, acho que a gente pode começar. Welcome everyone. Well, I will just do a brief introduction in Portuguese, and then we can move on to English, ok? So, sejam todos bem-vindos. Eu acho que tem vários clientes aí da Austrália sempre, que falam português, obviamente. Muitos de vocês já conhecem a gente, mas, de qualquer forma, gostaria aqui só rapidamente falar um pouquinho sobre a AC, sobre a nossa paixão por dar suporte aí aos alunos internacionais, brasileiros, latinos e de outras nacionalidades que aqui estão. Tá? Eu estou aqui com o Nicholas Ivanoff, que é o agente de imigração registrado perante o escritório de Migration Agent Authority. Então, é um prazer tê-lo aqui. We have Nick with us today. talking about the myths about migration. Okay? Bom, o Student Center é uma agência de estudantes especializada em Oceania, obviamente, que a gente opera desde 2002, né? Então, aí estamos no nosso 18º ano de existência, e já assessoramos milhares de estudantes. Entre os nossos serviços estão o suporte na aplicação para colleges e universidades. A gente faz isso de forma gratuita. Na verdade, quem paga os nossos serviços são os próprios colégios e universidades, né? Então, a gente não paga nada. Além disso, a gente oferece suporte completo para os estudantes que aqui estão na Austrália, né? Desde o momento da sua chegada, para obter um tax number, abrir uma conta bancária, um certificado de RSA, mas vai um pouco além. Falamos, oferecemos suporte para propósitos acadêmicos, plano de carreira, e a ideia da nossa operação aqui é oferecer uma trilha, que a gente chama de Professional Trailhead, dando apoio aos nossos clientes para que eles consigam alcançar os seus objetivos profissionais, acadêmicos e pessoais, né? Então, a gente revê toda a parte de CV, cover letter, a gente convida profissionais de diversas áreas para falar aqui com os nossos clientes e também orientamos os nossos clientes sobre os benefícios de fazer um internship. Ok? Em parceria com o NIC, a gente oferece suporte para assuntos relacionados à imigração, que eles passam por toda a parte de skill assessment, migration plan, que a gente vai falar um pouco hoje, e também todas as questões relacionadas à gestão de dados. Se nós combinarmos todos esses serviços, a gente vai estar falando aí de um valor de aproximadamente $3.250, que não são cobrados pelos nossos clientes. Tem todos esses benefícios aí que poderiam custar mais de $3.000 e que são oferecidos para os clientes da Australian Center de forma gratuita. Ok? Obviamente, estamos em Melbourne, Brisbane, Sydney e Perth. Esses são os e-mails e telefones do nosso escritório. Adolfo, se você quiser fazer uma introdução aí em espanhol.
Claro, Vini. Pues, primero que nada, me gustaría dar la bienvenida a todos los que están participando en este webinar, a Nick y a ti también. Pues, como comentaste, no sé si podrías poner el slide. Australian Center es una empresa que tiene ya varios años de experiencia en el mercado de estudiantes internacionales. Ofrecemos varios servicios enfocados en dar valor a nuestros clientes. Dentro de esos servicios es el soporte en inscripción para las escuelas y las universidades. Tenemos un catálogo bastante amplio de universidades en toda Australia. Tenemos el Student Service Support, que es ese primer soporte que los estudiantes necesitan cuando llegan a Australia. La abertura de banco, los permisos iniciales que necesitan para trabajar. Y para un plano ya más a mediano y a largo plazo tenemos el soporte de Trailhead, que es enfocado más en dar el soporte profesional para muchas personas que están buscando trabajar en su área profesional. Los ayudamos con el soporte de elaboración de currículum profesional y cover letter. Y por último, en nuestro catálogo lo integramos con los servicios migratorios que Nick ofrece. Tenemos oficinas en toda Australia, en Melbourne, en Sydney y en Brisbane. Entonces, pues espero que todos saquen provecho de este webinar sobre los 7 mitos para migrar para Australia. Gracias y bienvenidos.
Muito bem, muito obrigado, Adolfo. Sempre prazer tê-los aí conosco. Thank you so much, Adolfo, for your introduction in Spanish. Great to have Adolfo on board and be able to service all the Spanish speakers as well. Great. So from now on, I will give room to Nick, who will talk about the exciting 7 myths of migration.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I did want to outline, if you do have any questions or anything like that, I think using Zoom, you are able to post some questions. I think you have a choice to be able to post it to everyone or the panelists. But by all means, if you do have any questions, Adolfo is here and Vinny is here as well. So feel free to ask. I recognise that maybe English is not the first language for everyone. So I'll kind of go at a steady pace just so that we can get through it. So hopefully you are all seeing the introduction screen. Look, if there are any problems hearing or anything like that, please let us know and we'll get onto it straight away. Okay.
Just move to CMA, sorry about that. Just make it easier for us. Okay, there you go.
Excellent. Okay. So really, it's for me, it's very important that people that are looking to study in Australia or are currently studying in Australia have a good understanding of how the system works and getting a good idea of, I guess, pathways. Australian migration is now not a matter of luck, but it is a very competitive situation. And that's something that we'll get into. So let's have a look at the reality of getting permanent residency. Okay, just 1 second. I think we've gone to the last slide rather than the first one. What number is this one? So that's the last one. We're just having technical problems. Please hold on. It is a great presentation, but like all presentations on webinars, there's bound to be a couple of problems.
Okay. That's interesting. Let me just stop here for a second. Okay.
So we're just fixing a few things. Won't be very long, but I do want to talk about permanent residency and the reality of getting permanent residency. We're going to be looking at some statistics. We're also going to be looking at, I guess, some of the biggest problems that students have. So it is a matter of, once you have a good understanding of how the system works, then you're able to plan. But I feel a lot of students are in a situation where they don't really know how it works, and being confused about such a large decision in your life is, it's not the best place to be. So, okay, is this, we're all good to go. So 123 Migration, my name is Nicholas Ivanoff. 123 Migration is my organisation. We are registered migration agents. We are based in Western Australia, and we really provide pathways or look at doing migration plans for all sorts of visas. We don't only deal with students. We do things like sponsored visas. We do partner visas. So we see a wide variety of different visas. We apply for these visas as well. And we also have a good understanding of how all of these visas work and how the whole system works. So we're not just dealing with one type of client, we're actually dealing with many different types of visas. So pathways to permanent residency, I've got my Migration Agents Registration Authority. So what I do want to outline first is that a lot of students are willing to spend around about $20,000 in 2 years on a course, okay? And generally that might be an average, but I think it is a large investment. It's a large investment in money, and it's also a large investment in time. Now, if you were to make this sort of investment without having some good advice, I mean, the small advice that you get is very, very valuable, and it's important that if you're making such a big decision, that you really do have some good advice and you understand what you're doing. Because putting $20,000 into anything, you really want to understand what's happening, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, like it's probably one of the best investments you can make. You know, to talk to a good migration agent, because it will clarify a lot of things that you have to do in the future.
Exactly.
Not agree more with you.
Oh, and I get a lot of people coming into my office, and they're at the end of their process, and they said, "Oh, well, you know, I thought this was going to happen, but it isn't. I've got problems. I've got 3 months to the end of my visa. You know, what do I do?" Now, a lot of these times, you know, they've spent a lot of money, they've spent a lot of time, and there isn't anything I can do because the planning wasn't there. So really what I'm saying to you is to think about the planning, the reality of getting permanent visas. Okay, so if we look at statistics about students, the amount of students that are applying directly for a permanent skilled visa, it's about 4% of students are their next visa application is a skilled permanent visa. So it isn't a lot of students that are really applying directly from their student visa to a permanent visa. And we will probably understand that a lot of these 4% have already been preparing their situation previously. Okay, so to think that, oh, I'm going to be a student and then go straight onto a permanent visa, it's not very realistic, okay? If we look at some of the key myths of why we're having these sorts of problems, what I wanted to do as well, just give me 2 seconds. Oh. Sorry. So, can I go backwards? Yes, I can. So, the biggest migration myths. Okay, this is really important. The first one is about sponsorships. The next one is about points. The third one is about cities. Fourth one is about occupations. The fifth one is about your course. Then we'll talk about countries. And then we'll talk about number 7, and can you get a visa? Okay? So these are some of the biggest myths. People that come into my office always have these sorts of issues. Okay? And I can see it all the time.
And it's interesting because there are some trends and some tools among international students that like it seems they seem to have created a reality that doesn't translate in facts, right?
Exactly.
So like a lot of people talk about few things that you have just listed here.
Yep.
But yeah, in fact, these statistics show something different, right?
Exactly. And the thing is, I understand why this has happened, but the problem is trying to get people to understand that, look, this system is not working the way you think it works. So our first myth is about sponsorships happening, okay? And what I want to do is take you back a little bit, okay? So that you understand the basis of what was happening before. So around about 2 years ago, there were some changes, but before March 2018, it was relatively easy to get a sponsor. All you needed was an employer, you needed a 2-year contract, a qualification, and you could effectively apply for a permanent visa, especially in regional areas. So an employer, a qualification, easy. You can go to college, get your qualification, and then find an employer, and boom, you can land yourself a permanent visa. The other thing was that it was relatively low cost as well. So normally the visa applicant would be the one that would be paying for the process and paying for the applications, and the employer didn't really have to pay anything. Maybe they signed a few forms, relatively simple. Now, after March 2018, there were some significant changes. And these are, 3 of the significant changes are you do require a skills assessment now if you want to apply for a permanent sponsored visa. Now, there are some exceptions, but I don't want you to think about, oh, I'll be an exception, because the exceptions are very small, right? You really need to think, okay, the bulk of these permanent sponsored visas do require a skills assessment. If you're not sure what a skills assessment is, You really need to understand the skills assessment. Super important. Now, the second thing is about the cost of what it costs the employer. So around now at the moment, employers now have to pay around about $3,000 to $5,000 out of their own business in order to sponsor you. So
the commitment of the employer has increased a lot.
Well, when you think about an employer committing to sponsor someone, obviously there's the paperwork, but then there's also the money. And they do have Australians to choose from as well, okay? So you really need to find an employer that is committed. Now, the third one, and this is the big one, is that you need 3 years full-time experience in your occupation before you can apply for any permanent visa. So the issue is, especially for students, is that students are unable to get full-time experience while on their student visa, okay? So they might have a qualification, they might even have an assessment, but without the 3 years full-time experience, they're not able to apply for a permanent sponsored visa that's offered by an employer. So this is one of the biggest myths is, oh, I'm going to get it sponsored by an employer. I want to try and get it. Without the experience, without an assessment, it's not going to happen. If you're, you might have heard people that, yes, they've been able to get sponsored. It wasn't a bad process. The employer was happy to do it. Yes, but did they get sponsored, you know, before March 2018? I would guess, yes, they were. The rules have changed and it's not as easy as it once was. For a temporary visa, for one of these 482 TSS holds, I won't speak in jargon, but yes, you still do need full-time experience. You need 2 years full-time experience. So for these temporary visas. So what the Immigration Department has said is, look, you can get sponsored, but you need experience in your occupation, okay? So that's number one. Number two myth that I've got is more points the better. This is a wonderful thing that I get people coming into the office all the time and say, oh, I'm worried about more points, or I need more points and points. Lovely. But the issue is, if we're just focused on points, you're really not going to be focused on the bigger picture, okay? Points are just one small part of the any migration plan, right? And we're thinking about now getting nominated by a government. So these are the federal government invitations for the 189 visa. And we'll see that, of course, in 2018, they were giving away a lot. And then in May 2019, you know, the amount of invitations dropped significantly. The reason for this is the federal government chose to implement a new system for regional visas. Okay, so they said, look, we're going to slow down on our federal government invitations, but we'll let the states and regions do more invitations. So the thing is, the federal government, the amount of invitations that they give out now is round about 20% of all invitations. Before it was probably about 55%. So if you are solely focused on points, then you know you're thinking about the federal government nomination, which is you're only focusing on 20% of the nomination. You really need to think about what the state that you're living, working, or studying in, and the region, what they're offering, because they have more options to offer nomination. Now, generally, they do require some points, but the points aren't as significant as they are for the federal government. So if you're thinking about points, you're really thinking about how the old system worked. Okay?
Yeah. So complying with whatever that specific state or territory is requesting is probably more important than the points itself, right?
Well, I mean, the points make up one part of it, but yes, those states and regions have a far, they have their own requirements, okay? And they have their own way of doing things. So it's not just a matter of, oh yeah, I'm going to be right with my points, I'm going to have a huge amount of points. Yeah, it doesn't quite work like that. So really, more points the better, not necessarily, okay? Really, there are other ways to be able to get a permanent visa that you should be exploring.
So in other words, maybe we could say that someone has less points but comply with all the requirements from a specific state or territory may have better chance than someone that has maybe 5 or 10 points more than that person.
Ah, definitely, definitely. Yep. Okay, myth number 3. Okay, big cities, more opportunity.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Oh yeah, I get excited sometimes. I should calm down. Okay, so what I've got here is 2 graphics, and what they're really representing is numbers. Okay, so you will see that New South Wales, Victoria, and Queensland, these are student populations in New South Wales, Victoria, and it's a proportion of the size. So you'll see that I've kind of sectioned off the regional areas like Western Australia, South Australia. So the majority of students in Australia are in New South Wales, Victoria, and Queensland. Now, if we look at the invitations and nominations that are available across the country, we'll see that, okay, there are these 189 from the federal government, but obviously they're not giving out a whole heap of those. We've got invitations that are available to people in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. But then we've also, with these changes, we see that there are a lot more regional invitations. Now, when we compare the amount of invitations that are available to students, we see that Melbourne, Sydney, and Brisbane invite, if we look at it proportionally, we see a lot of students fighting over a lot less invitations. Okay?
Yeah.
In the regional areas, however, we see that the odds of being able to get an invitation increase significantly. Okay.
Well, I really like that graph, Nick, because to me it shows that despite of having 1/6 of the students, those areas are getting 2/3 of the invitation.
Yeah, exactly right. So I mean, the thing is that this is all about probability. This is all about increasing your opportunity. Okay. If you think big cities are providing more opportunity, unfortunately, it's not the case. You won't be able to get a sponsor because they're without experience. How are you going to find it? I mean, there's a lot of work, obviously, in those big cities. But when we're thinking about permanent visas, you really have to start thinking about, okay, I've got to start thinking about regional areas. Okay.
Let me just check something here. Just double check if we've got the right. Yeah, I think it should be right.
Okay, this is another one. On the list occupations, I hear it all the time. People say, "Oh, my occupation's on the list." Oh, you know, and it's a saying which kind of is a little bit confusing to me. The only reason is because there are 28 different occupation lists across Australia, and each of them have different requirements. So when someone says, "Oh, my occupation is on the list," I actually know that they don't know what they're talking about. You really have to say, on what list is my occupation? Where are the opportunities for my occupation? Because it might be on one list or on the list, which I think people deem as the federal, the federal government's high demand list, medium to long term list. So that's the one that they're only thinking about. But there are, 27, 26 different occupation lists across Australia. So, by focusing on that particular list, you're really not looking at the whole picture. You're looking at a very small picture. So,
and also, would you say that it's fair to mention that they also not looking at the criteria that the skill assessment body is like I'm a patient in the list, but you're not sure if you comply with the skill assessment requirements. Would that be a fair comment?
Well, yeah, but generally the skills assessment is a different part of the process. But occupations are very important, but you have to understand, I guess, on what list is my occupation. So you have to change the question, okay? Super important. Alrighty, this is one which is fairly interesting. And it can be a little bit of a shock to people. We'll see that vocational courses, fantastic, because they're cheap, they're on the list. I've done that in quotation marks because obviously, we're trying. Some vocational courses you can get a graduate visa. it can be easy to get jobs in vocational courses, you know, whether it's something like a cook or a chef. They're available in regional areas, and you can get points, you know, studying vocational courses. Fantastic. So if we do a little bit of analysis, we'll have a look at the diploma in childcare. Ticks all of these boxes. Fantastic. And really what you're studying for is a childcare centre manager. Okay, so that's the occupation for the diploma in childcare. Now, there are over 106 colleges offering this across Australia, and it is the industry is projected to grow 20% in the next 5 years.
Looks good so far.
Yeah, well, yeah. But the thing is, the reality of the situation is less than 10 189 visas have been given for this occupation in the last 2 years. Okay, so less than 10 people have actually qualified to get an invitation for this particular occupation. Now, the reason being is the skills assessment, as you were talking about before. The skills assessment for a childcare centre manager, if you have a diploma, it requires you to have 3 years of full-time experience, okay? Which, unfortunately, if you do get your graduate visa, you only get 18 months. So, therefore, you can't get your skills assessment. So, meanwhile, there are 106 colleges offering this particular course.
Thousands of students.
Thousands of students. When we think about the thousands of students, all the people that are studying, less than 10 have been successful getting a 189 visa. Okay. So, and once again, we have to think about the sponsorship options. You need 3 years of full-time experience to do that. So experience is key in this particular vocational course pathway, right? But you can't get it on your graduate visa. You're only limited to 18 months. So really, that's what makes, you know, it's impossible to get permanent residency with this particular vocational course unless you're able to get a significant amount of experience, but your visa's going to run out.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's really what the issue is. Plan for your skills assessment. Your skills assessment needs to be one of the key things that you're focusing on. So you'll see the graphic in the background. We'll see Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Pretty much that's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point that you raising there, saying like focus on your skill assessment, because sooner, my understanding is that sooner you get your skill assessment, quicker you're going to be able to work in your occupation, and therefore you're going to have more experience.
Well, I mean, the skills assessment, you're able to, you know, start the process of, you know, applying for permanent visas. Okay, so it's kind of like the key that opens the door into the migration possibilities. But without your skills assessment, you know, you're not really entering into the migration process. All right, number 6, some countries do well. So this is very interesting. And, you know, we'll see that these are, I think, around about the top 25 countries for permanent, skilled permanent visas in 2019. Okay, all of the information is on the Immigration Department website. If you want to check it out, go through it. I do it all the time. You know, it's part of what I do. Yeah. But we can see that, you know, there are different, there are particular countries that are very successful, and some of them don't necessarily talk about English. Some of them necessarily don't talk English, or have English as a first language. Yeah, no worries.
Right? Okay, much better.
We're doing okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. So some countries do better than others, but we'll see that, look, if you look at continents, so, you know, how many applicants for skilled visas are coming from which continents. I had to split Asia into 3 parts because really a lot of permanent visas or skilled visas are coming from Asia, okay? Asia Central, India, Pakistan, Nepal, nearly 40,000, Europe, quite good, Asia. Then we get into New Zealand, we get into Africa, 5,000. The Middle East, 3,600, North America, 3,000, and then Latin America is 2,676. So the thing is that we've got, I guess, some Latin American countries. I mean, Brazil isn't doing too badly, but obviously there are countries like Iran, there are countries like Pakistan and Nepal that are doing exceptionally well, and there is a reason for this. Okay, so it is a matter of understanding and being able to compare what different countries do. Applicants from different countries have a different, I guess, pathways, okay? They do different things and they have different choices to make, okay?
I think this graphic just displays that very clearly.
Yeah, we've got country A here, and we can see country A has a fair few students and country B less students, okay? But when we
So
look,
you would imagine at the stage that the country A would get more permanent residency, because they have more students?
more students, more permanent visas available, hopefully. But the reality is country B has, for every one permanent visa from country A, there are 10 permanent visas from country B, okay? Which is a significant difference. And really, this is because of the pathways that they take, okay? So it's not because of discrimination. It's not because of any problems with English. It's not because of, you know, any money or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
The main issue is because of the choices that the students make, okay? So what we want to do is kind of turn that around and say, okay, we really need to think about, as a student, as a plan, as a pathway,
If you
to plan it out.
To stay in a shorter permanently, you have to look at some.
You really need to plan it out, okay? Because yeah, to think, oh, I'm getting at the end of my student visa, and you know, I've got 2 months to go, and oh, what am I going to get? I'll get quotations, and then that's it. I mean, that's fine, it works, but it isn't really going to help you in terms of the long run. And what we want to do, especially with Australian Centre, is combine, you know, the fact that, you know, you've got some understanding about the migration pathway, and also you've got access to the courses. So this is the last myth, all right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, really the problem, this is another problem that happens very, very often. And this is where a lot of students can go wrong. And a lot of it, any visa applicants go wrong. It is asking the wrong question. So when a visa applicant comes to me and says, oh, can I get permanent residency doing this course? Mm-hmm. Generally, you know, my answer would be yes, you can. All right? Because, I mean, yeah, I mean, if it's not impossible, mm-hmm. yes, you can.
Yeah, yeah.
But if we look at the statistics, if we look at the amount of people that are actually getting it, then
the chances are not that great.
What are the chances? Yeah. The chances might be, you know, 1 or 0.5% or something like that. So you really shouldn't be asking, can you get PR doing this pathway? It's not the way to go. You really need to say, what are my chances? How successful have the people been before me in getting permanent visas? All right, that should really be, you know, what you're looking at. Okay, so normally I say, look, can you get PR? Yes, you can. Can you go to the moon on SpaceX? Yes, you can. What are the chances? Sometimes they're about the same as going to the moon on SpaceX. All right. So it is a matter of understanding what are the chances, and that's why we want to think about statistics and those sorts of things. All right. So the major changes that no one is talking about. Now, this is quite interesting because we see that there has been a significant change in the way that the system works. And there are more opportunities now, especially since October, right? There are more opportunities now for people in Australia, okay? Now, this isn't just because of COVID or anything like that, but in 2019, the applicant applicants from outside of Australia, around about 55% of permanent skill visas were for applicants outside of Australia. These are nominated visas, okay? So if you had really good English, if you had your skills assessment, experience in your occupation, fantastic. You could apply from your home country and apply for a permanent visa in Australia without even coming into Australia. But the changes now, because there are more invitations for the states and the regions, they want to look after the people that are living, working and studying in their state or region, okay? So they're really not going to give these invitations out to people that are offshore, that are overseas. So it does open up more opportunities for people that are in Australia. So there are more opportunities for students. It's just a matter of being able to figure out, especially the states and the regions, why that's important. So, you know, if we look at things like statistics, better choices, and this is true, may increase your chances of permanent residency by more than 7 times, okay? Just a few changes in your course can make all the difference, a significant difference, okay? So, yeah.
That's why it's so important to get proper advice.
Of course, yeah, exactly right. Because what we want to do is we want to increase your opportunities, okay? That's what it's all about. I mean, no one can ever guarantee that you'll be able to migrate, right? But what we want to do is increase the amount of opportunities that you have, okay? Okay, destructive assumptions. All right, now, a lot of people think that, look, you know, they have an attitude where, okay, I'm going to kind of work my way through and, you know, I'm able to beat the immigration department at their own game, you know, or maybe I'll be a bit tricky and all of those sorts of things, right? And so, you know, they kind of have this mentality of being able to, oh, I'm going to do this and then get onto that visa and, you know, and I kind of call that Jackie Channing the migration department, okay? You're really in a stage where, you know, you're able to deflect everything and move through. But what I do want to outline is that the immigration department is a very, what's the best way to put it? They're a department with a significant amount of data. They know exactly what they're doing. They have all this data from all these different countries. They have risk profiles, and generally they'll know what you're trying to do before you really do it. Okay. Yeah. So it is a matter of, look, destructive assumptions of thinking that you can Jackie Chan the immigration department. It doesn't work like that. You can't just, you know, flip over here and do this and, you know, switch over there, and it just doesn't work. Okay. And I've seen it a million times. The immigration department is a very intelligent kind of entity. Okay. And you need to respect that. So it's not something where you can, you know, get through loopholes, and maybe there are some loopholes, but they are closed. Yeah. Okay. Destruction.
At the end of the day, you want to do the right thing too, right? You know, like, I think it's important to understand what are the criteria, you know, like what's the system requires, but you want to do the right thing. You don't want to play, you know, a game that well, it's not fair with the immigration, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, well, I mean,
there are good ways to do the right thing.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And I'm not suggesting anyone, but it's kind of like thinking, oh, I'm going to study my course, get a graduate visa, go on a training visa, then get my sponsor, and then, you know, do all of these sorts of moves. Yeah. And it's like, well, you know, training visas, you know, they're a large commitment by an employer. I mean, generally they're for larger employers that give out these, and it's just kind of flipping on to these, you know, visas which aren't really utilised for, you know, what people want to utilise them for. Okay, they're kind of being able to use some visas, not what they're intended for. And, you know, that sort of thing is just something that, you know, it usually comes unstuck. So you can get a sponsor. To think that you'll get a sponsor, obviously we talked about it at the start, just think that everything will fall into place. It doesn't work like that anymore. The course is the key to permanent residency. Okay, this is also a destructive assumption, as you alluded to before, because what really is the key is your skills assessment. Okay, if you can't get your skills assessment, I mean, I tend to find that the course is probably the easiest part of a migration pathway, because you've got control over it. You know, you're able to, you know, do the course and finish it, and then you say, oh, I'm qualified, right? And this is the problem. People think they're qualified, but for migration, you need the skills assessment.
Sometimes there are other requirements for experience.
Exactly right. And I think the thing is that even though you've got an Australian qualification, that's fine, but it doesn't mean that you automatically get a skills assessment. This is one of the key things. Okay? And then we have to look at luck. People think, oh, you know, this is a lucky, it'll just work out for me. I've just got this great feeling. But the thing is that what we've got now is we've got a system which is, what do I say? It's a competitive system. It's not about luck anymore. Back in March 2018, yeah, it was a little bit about luck. You can find an employer, do all those sorts of things. But you know, we're in a competitive system now.
If you do talk to a good migration agent, you will have more luck.
That's a very good point there. Very good point. Okay, so going forward, the thing is that as 123 Migration, we do offer what's called a migration. Okay, so a migration plan is a 30-minute consultation, and what we do is, you know, I develop a document for you, and which outlines, you know, we're going to talk about assessments, we'll talk about occupations, we'll talk about your history, we'll talk about, you know, points, we'll talk about nomination, we'll talk about all of these different things that need to come together in order to migrate. It is something that is a working document. It's not as if it's like, oh, this is a snapshot now, and then what I'll do is, you know, wander off and in 2 years come back and, oh, so what's happening? It is something, a migration plan is exactly a plan. It might change. You might need a plan B.
It's likely that there will be some change, right?
I mean, but we can also, you know, look at that as well. Yeah. We can also understand, you know, what is going on and kind of, okay, well, what kind of changes? There is ways to do that. Okay. But what I want to do in the migration plan, really, it's important that you know how the system works. Okay? If you understand how the system works, then you can start to piece together everything for yourself. Okay? After that, we can examine statistics from different government departments. We can look at, you know, who is being successful and your chances for obtaining permanent residency. We can look at what changes are likely to occur in the future. And we can also think about what courses are best to get you to your goal. So really, a migration plan is a key thing, yeah, in terms of being able to get you on a pathway to understand how, you know, to migrate. Now, it could be one of the best investments you can make in your life. Okay. I mean, you know, in comparison to the benefits, a migration plan is a drop in the ocean, really. And it's something that, you know, is going to give you a way forward in more opportunities. You might not like what you hear sometimes, but it's better that you know now rather than towards, you know, the end of what it is.
You know, unrealistic expectations.
Exactly right. So look, that's what I have to share with you today. Hopefully you've enjoyed my 7 myths of migration.
Yeah.
And you know, it is a matter of accumulating all of these myths from all of the people that I see all of the time. Okay, they arrive in my office. And these are the most, you know, destructive assumptions in this. So hopefully I've been able to help you. If you want to book a migration plan, I think we'll send you through a link where you can make that booking. And if you do have any questions, by all means, get in contact with us, maybe leave a question, and we'd be more than happy to answer.
Yes, no, like we might be able to take some questions now. And just want to emphasize, and I will do that in Portuguese, then I'll ask Adolfo to do it in Spanish. Bom, eu acho que o próximo passo para quem está interessado em fazer o Migration Plan é buscar uma consulta com o Nick Essa consulta está disponível para pessoas em qualquer lugar, tá? Então a gente pode organizar essa consulta via videoconferência, assim como a gente está fazendo esse webinar. E se vocês quiserem vir aqui no nosso escritório, também elas estão disponíveis aqui com horário agendado. Legal? Adolfo, você quer trazer essas mesmas informações em espanhol, por favor?
Claro, Vini. Prácticamente el siguiente paso, si ustedes están interesados en tener ese plan migratorio, es agendar una consulta con Nick. La consulta se puede hacer independientemente, no importa en qué ciudad estén ubicados, y vamos a estar mandando el link para que ustedes hagan ese booking con Nicolás. Y eso es todo. Tenemos algunas preguntas ahí. We have few questions.
Okay, so there were a couple of new questions. I saw, just give me 2 seconds. I'll just have a quick look. For the first part, clarified, experience in our home country. Right, yes, you can use experience in your home country. Thanks for your question. Nick said the experience needed to be completed after graduation in Australia. Look, that is sometimes a little bit of a difficult question, whether you can use the experience that you've gained. It depends. Sometimes if you're qualified, sometimes it's after graduation. It really depends also on what type of application, because, you know, for skills assessment, normally they'll want you to have experience afterwards. For sponsored visas, it doesn't matter when you have your experience. You can have your experience back in, but it needs to be qualified. For nomination, generally, you'll need to have it after your... So, you know, to say, oh, what experience, you know, can I use the experience in Brazil? The short answer is yes, you can. But the bigger question is, but what for?
Yeah.
Okay.
For the skill assessment or for towards their points.
Yeah. The question again. Okay, give me 2 seconds. Okay. Larissa Cruz asked cuánto tiempo dura todo el proceso. That was my Spanglish. And what is the cost of the consultation? So
that's an important one because we want to talk about that. So.
Yeah. So the process of the application for permanent residency, look, it can be quite quick. Okay, if you apply for a permanent visa, in some circumstances it can take 2 or 3 months. Okay, in some circumstances, the process of being able to get a permanent visa, we have to think of it as a pathway. Okay, you're looking at 2-3 years, right, minimum, to be able to get everything together that you need. Unless you have everything together, you've got great English, you've studied a bit, you've done. I mean, if you've got the complete package, fantastic. But the thing is, it will take at least 2 or 3 years to get your situation.
But I think it's a really fair assessment to say that it varies a lot. Maybe someone has very large work experience in a large company in a specific occupation. Part of this experience was done in Australia. Their English is fantastic, and they graduated here in Australia as well. Like they have all the documents, IELTS, and so forth. That might be fast.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
Definitely right. But if you're starting from a situation where you're just getting into the study side of things, maybe you've got some experience back in your home country, it might be okay as well. I mean, still, there are more opportunities for students in Australia. So, and generally it's a 2-year kind of commitment that, we have to remember that the Australian government, or Australia in general, we have our 3 biggest exports. We've got iron ore, we've got coal, and then we've got education. Okay, so education is something that Australia is very focused on. It's very important to the Australian economy, education. And so that's why they're packaging education up with permanent residency. Okay, so it's kind of like the carrot for a lot of students. But really, it's a matter of being able to focus. So look, generally, I would say the process is going to take 2-3 years. In some cases, it may take more.
Yeah, I think, and regarding the consultation costs, Nick, and then I would just want to add some specifics about how we work together with you. So, like, how much does your consultation cost?
So, my consultation costs normally $170. It can be done online, or if you're in Western Australia, you can come and visit me in my office in Fremantle. I do have a special with Australian Centre where I offer it at $127.50 if you're an Australian Centre client. So, you know, that's generally what the cost is now. You know, things change, but...
Yeah, no, so I'll just add a comment on that. So, então, assim, $170 o preço normal, 127,50 para estudantes da Australian Center, mas tem uma coisa super importante em relação a isso. Se você é estudante, né, e você fechar o seu curso conosco, você terá esses 127,50 de crédito conosco. Tá? Então, você praticamente, essa consulta vai sair de graça. Tá certo? Então, assim, se você, por exemplo, fechou o seu curso também nas últimas semanas, a gente também pode considerar em te isentar esse preço da consulta. Tá bom? Então, acho que isso é uma informação bastante relevante. Pagou a consulta, $127,50, que já é um preço com desconto. Fechou o curso com o Australian Center, vai ter esse crédito, não vai pagar nada na consulta, praticamente.
Thank you.
Nick is a very good Spanish speaker, so he can pretty much understand everything that we're saying.
Well, you know, Brazilian, I mean, Portuguese is a bit different, but yes. Yeah, I'm going to launch a poll. How's that?
Tem uma pesquisinha, se vocês puderem responder, acho que é bem interessante para a gente. A gente vai estar entrando em contato com vocês depois desse evento para avaliar quais seriam os próximos passos e como essa parceria entre a 123 e a Australian Center pode te ajudar. Tá? Mas se vocês puderem responder aqui, só para a gente ter uma ideia aí mais ou menos de como está a situação de vocês e qual que é o perfil das pessoas que estão atendendo a esse evento, acho que seria bem legal. Tá?
All right, so I've got a couple of other questions here. So once invited, based on your skills, do you have to work in this area? In a sponsorship visa by a business, yes, you do. If you get nominated, no, you don't. Okay. So what's more important?
Translate that for you. Is that mais importante seria?
Is your chosen course or your professional experience? Look, what is more important, your chosen course or professional experience? To tell you the truth, it depends on the occupation.
Yeah.
You know, it depends on the skills assessment. It depends on, you know, the amount of work that's available. Okay, so, you know, it is, the answer is it depends, I'm afraid. Okay, if you open your own company and employ Australians, does it help? Look, very difficult pathway. I mean, you need to employ a lot of it.
Yeah, in the past, I think some people have done that, but I guess it has become harder, right?
Yeah, look, I mean, sponsoring yourself is a bit of a nightmare. You know, that sort of thing, opening your own company and employing Australians, that's kind of a little bit like Jackie Chan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You kind of, all right, I'm gonna, you know, but really, it's fraught with risks. Okay, and I mean, it is possible. I'm going to say, can it be done? Yes, you can.
Yeah. Would you say that, like, for this question, it will also depend on what the kind of enterprise we're talking about?
Well, look, it depends on the kind of enterprise. It depends where you are, where the enterprise is. If it's in a regional area, then maybe you've got, you know, an okay hope. I know Queensland, for example, and Tasmania do offer incentives potentially for those sorts of concepts, but it's not something where you can just kind of, oh yeah, you know,
you
walk through and you know, it's, I mean, you know, they don't muck around.
Yeah.
You know, these are governments that love paperwork. Australians love paperwork. We're very bureaucratic. Okay, so you know, you really have to be careful that, you know, you need all of the papers, you need everything lining up. It's not just going to fall into your lap. Okay, I've got about 4 questions, so I am getting through them. PhD in Australia is considered work experience. Can I apply for PR while doing the PhD? Yes, you can. PhD in Australia is considered work experience. I guess, yes, it depends on, you know, what entity is you need to prove the experience to. For nominated visas, for example, they need you to do the work experience while on a graduate visa. In some respects, I'm not talking about points either. Points have a different way of doing it. You've got, you know, sponsor. I mean, it's complicated, especially with PhDs. So, you know, that's something that obviously you need to consider, and it depends in what context we're talking about. Unfortunately, this is the problem with migration, is that there is no simple answer.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's always important that you understand how the system works. That's why it does take 90 minutes to go through all of this, because I want you to understand how it works. And then you have a concept of, oh, okay, now I can piece together what it is.
And it's interesting, Nick, because some cases may look very alike, but you know, like the small details may make a big difference.
100%,
That's correct.
100%, 100%. I mean, people that get their information on Facebook and blogs, it's a bit of a nightmare, right? Because if the information is 6 months old, forget about it, right? I wouldn't do it. You have to think about whether you can do something, because a lot of you say, can I do it? Yes, you can. But what are the chances? You need to look at the probabilities, right? Have there been successful people doing it in the past? That's what you should search for. Oh, who's been successful doing this? And if you don't get anyone back, that's a bit of a sign that there's a problem. That's maybe what I'd use Facebook for. Okay. Can I apply for a visa partner with an Australian? Oh, just move again.
If you can apply for a partner visa while you are on a student visa, or you have to wait until the end of the student visa.
Yeah, you can apply for it, not a problem. But the thing is that it takes 20 months to grant the visa. Therefore, you still need to abide by the obligations of your student visa. So you're still tied into studying the course and things like that.
Yeah, it's always a good idea to comply with your visa conditions, right?
or generally, it's a good idea, yes. Rodney says, for those over 40 years old, is there much less chance of getting the PR? Look, Rodney, I don't think so. You know, it depends on your situation, and it depends, you know, I guess whether you're 42, then you're starting to, you know, you've got 3 years in order to get everything worked out. That can be a bit tough, right? So if you're at 40, you've still got a little bit of time to make the changes and do what you need to do. There are still opportunities, but you really have to be kind of very focused on what it is that you want to do. Okay. When we talk about regional areas, I see some friends going there, but they don't find work, and it's also either hard to find work in their professional area, making the process a bit tricky. I like this question. It's like the government offers opportunities in these areas, but for getting PR, but they still make it hard to work being a student in these areas. What's your idea about it? This is a fantastic question, because this is one of the things that, you know, we look at within the migration plan. We say, okay, you know, you can go, for example, to Darwin, you can go to Tasmania, right? But how many jobs are there for, let's say, a mechanical engineer in Tasmania, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be struggling, okay? So really it is a matter of identifying, you know, looking at the different economies. How do they run? Looking at what jobs are available. So it's not a matter of just going, oh yeah, you know, I've got my suitcase packed and I'm going to the regional area. You have to think, what regional area is going to increase your opportunities? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's what you want to see, okay? These are all, you know, we're talking about probabilities. You know, we're talking about possibilities and being able to maximize, right?
So, and Nick, let me just say something about, which is very unique about your approach towards a migration plan. And I'll do that in Portuguese if you allow me to do so, right? Like the use of the use of statistics. That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
I don't think it's something maybe I'm not sure whether that's an unfair assessment, but I'm not sure whether all migration agents take the similar approach or use those tools to provide advice. So I'll just translate that em português. Então, assim, eu acho que uma coisa muito legal e uma das razões porque a gente está contente em trabalhar com o Nick é por conta dessa abordagem, utilizando estatísticas para fazer o planejamento junto com os alunos. Tá? É uma abordagem diferente do que a gente vê sendo praticada por outros agentes de migração, mas para mim, estatística é um espelho da realidade e deve ser sim utilizada como ferramenta.
Okay, excellent. I'm getting through. Just that last one on that regional area and which one to go to. We'll find that it's a choice that you have to make. You have to make a choice between how much opportunity is one place and how much work is in place as well. Really, what you want to do is you want to find that balance.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to Tiago. He says, with the current COVID situation, forcing a lot of students to leave Australia, do you think that will make an increase in the amount of invitations, or maybe help ease the migration process and new skills on the list? My gut feeling, right, is the students that are studying now, if they're on a pretty good pathway, then they will have a really good opportunity come 2 years down the track, okay? Because there aren't more students entering into the country. So they're not going to increase the amount of invitations. I don't see them doing that. I don't see them decreasing it. But what I do see is that the pool of people that can actually apply for these invitations is going to be smaller. And so you are, in 2 years, 3 years time, potentially have the opportunity to be in, to have a higher probability of an invitation. Which are the main regional areas with the greatest visa application opportunities?
It depends. Isn't it the best answer?
Yeah, look. I mean, if you go super regional, you've got a great chance. But the problem is, again, you've got to find a job. You've got to be able to put food on the table and a roof over your head, So, and also...
But the roof over your head is cheaper in regional areas.
Well, yes, but you've also got to find the right course as well, right? So, I mean, not all courses are available in regional areas.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it is a matter of kind of combining everything together. Okay. Thank you. I used to work 7 years. After learning English, can I work here with my certificates? Look, that is a very specific question and probably something that I'd really have to look into. And also, I'm not really a specialist on whether you can work in an industry. Mm-hmm. I'm more of a specialist of trying to get you a permanent visa. Does that make sense? So it really depends on what type of work you're looking at as well. I mean, if you're looking at working in a childcare centre, I think they'll, go for it. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at teaching students, then that might be a little bit of a difficult one. Do you use data analytics to find out about probability, says Gabriela? Yes, I do, Gabriela. Yes.
Yeah, Gabriela is probably studying data analytics. That's a very specific question, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But yes, that's what we want to go to. Okay, Larissa Cruz, does your background need to match with your...
Yes, I am.
Does your background need to match with your professional experience? Does your background... No, not necessarily. No. There are, there was a guy that came into my office the other day and he says, oh, look, I've got my master's in IT and I'm now working for a company that's doing, what are they doing? They're kind of earth sciences, minerals and things like that.
All right, okay.
The degree was not related to the experience that he's getting, but he can utilise that within the skills assessment, okay? So, that kind of rolls into an opportunity. Mm-hmm. So really the skills assessment was more about experience than the specific degree that they had. So, I mean, it really does depend. But, we have to think as well, he was able to work full time, okay? It wasn't like a part-time thing or anything like that. Yeah. Okay.
Nick, we have just gone over 1 hour, so I think we can go for the last 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah, I think we've only we've only got one question left from Marina. Okay, in order to complete an international student course, Diploma of Early Childhood, must I be under the student visa? Can I be under a partner visa, for example? Most definitely you can be under a partner visa. There are no
limitations on how much you can study.
Yeah, that's right. There are no conditions on the partner visa or on the bridging visa. So yeah, you know, a partner visa is obviously a fairly robust visa to be on. The process does take a long time. It's not as if it's going to be, you know, 6 months. It's going to be at least 20 months worth of waiting and all of those sorts of things. But yeah, that's...
Yeah, well, I think those were very interesting questions, but I would highly recommend, if you're serious about staying in Australia, to book a consultation with Nick, okay? There is a bit of an investment there, but you're gonna get a credit, you know, as an Australian Centre client, so I think that's pretty good. It's gonna be almost free for those that keep on studying with us here at AC. Então, eu gostaria de finalizar aqui a apresentação, and I'd like to thank you, Nick, for your time and being here with us. It's been amazing to work with you. Thank you so much. I think it was a very productive day today.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. And I truly hope that this is a first step towards a beautiful story that some of our clients will start from today onwards.
Yeah, excellent. No problems. Okay, so we'll send an email and we'll go from there.
Espera pelo nosso e-mail. Esse e-mail vai vir com um link que você pode diretamente no link buscar a sua consulta com o Nick. E, enfim, se vocês tiverem qualquer dúvida, a nossa equipe aqui da Australian Center vai estar disponível para vocês. Muito obrigado a todos que participaram da organização desse evento, ao Rafael Araque, ao Adolfo, a Lu que está aqui comigo, a Betânia. Obrigado a todos vocês aí que foram super importantes aqui nessa organização, a toda a nossa equipe da Australian Center e a vocês que participaram desse evento. A gente espera poder ajudá-los. Ok? Do you want to say a few words, Adolfo, before we finish?
Solamente no queda más que agradecer, Vini, a Nick y a los participantes y ponernos a su disposición, ¿no? Como comentaste anteriormente, si realmente tienen planos serios de migrar, yo creo que no hay mejor inversión que hacer una consulta con un agente de inmigración y qué mejor que Nick, ¿no? Que da el reporte para ellos al final y en base a ese reporte nosotros podemos organizar el plano académico también para tener más chances de tener otro tipo de opciones después de la visa de estudiante. Eso es todo de mi parte. Gracias a todos.
Fantástico, Adolfo. Muito obrigado. Obrigado a todos. E nos vemos no próximo webinar aqui da Australian Center. A gente sempre vai buscar oferecer para vocês muita informação legal aí e relevante para os seus projetos aqui na Austrália. Nos vemos em breve. Tchau, tchau.
Bye bye.